Global TV Network and Kuno Good People TV. We are live here right now in Keto Mom PH, and of course, my favorite baker in the world, Jean Joy, the real Keto Mom. Yung only Keto Mom that I got. So it is a very special day, and as you can see, we are celebrating. So behind us is my mommy, and Angela, and my sister-in-law, and my brother, of course, Alvin. So we are celebrating my fasting anniversary. So this has been 2 years already since we started extended fasting. Intermittent fasting, we never had a anniversary talaga because somewhat it's been practiced and then not practiced. But extended fasting is somewhat very special because it has been the start. Para siyang life-changing event now. And with extended fasting also comes, of course, keto or low-carb diet. So we have here Keto Mom. Thank you so much for welcoming us. Come anytime. So our topic right now is about
cholesterol.
Cholesterol, yes. And of course, cholesterol, even for us that has been into this for so long, but not everybody who is doing keto or low carb are still that knowledgeable when it comes to cholesterol. So many are still afraid, so many are still confused, and sometimes even if they are not afraid, and even if they are not confused that it is okay to be eaten, but whenever asked by someone, especially from our family members, other friends who is not into keto or low carb, we seldom don't know how to answer them. And as I'm sure with all of your followers, with all of your customers, for so many you have loyal customers that's been eating keto for the longest time, but there are those newcomers, new customers who wanted to try keto, wanted to do low carb, and sometimes they have questions, and we will talk about that. So if you guys have questions about cholesterol that you want to know, feel free to put them in the comment section and we will try to answer them. But for now, we have the Miss Jean here, our beloved Keto Mom, because I think she has a lot of questions also, although not from her, but from her loyal customers, and we are trying to address everybody. We would like to address everybody that cholesterol is something that we shouldn't be afraid of, and why we shouldn't be afraid of it. And if we don't if you are not afraid to cholesterol, then where should we be afraid? So before we proceed, I would like to say hi to our beloved, loyal, and happy audience, Annabelle Vicky Utuhan, Sir Ronnie, Richel, and Bem, of course, Mom. Hello. Punta ka dito. Come here. You come here. Are you still fasting? And of course, EJ. EJ, thank you so much for watching. Joe Laksamana. Good PM Doc. Interested ako sa topic. Salamat. So yes, our topic right now is cholesterol. So what comes to mind whenever it's cholesterol? Or ano ba yung common questions you think that people have in mind whenever we talk about cholesterol?
Doc, what is the difference between the good and bad cholesterol?
Okay, so there's the first one. Juliet Guritan Mendoza, thank you so much. Gina de Guzman Meneses, happy extended fasting anniversary. More years to celebrate. Thank you so much. This is really a very, very special Feb 1 because it's not just the month of love, but it's also the month of self-love. Okay? Now, self-love, more relaxation. More relaxation. Gita Lamar, hello po ma'am. I know you're watching from Singapore. Thank you so much. And Milet Aksaban, good afternoon. So, first question, what is bad cholesterol and what is good cholesterol? So, good and bad cholesterol is somewhat what we term whenever we get our lipid profile. So, when you get your blood exam, annual blood exam, especially for those who are already 40 years old and up, because when they say when you already reach 40 years old, you're already somewhat at risk for cardiovascular diseases. But we know now, we see as young as 20s and 30s succumbing to heart attack. Whereas we also have mommy who is already 65 years old, but at the best of her health, enjoying her keto bombs there. She enjoy, of course. So age is just a number, but by practice in medicine, once, for example, we have a patient that's scheduled for surgery, if it's already 40 years old and above, we already get the whole full panel of blood work up, thinking that that person already has higher risk of cardiovascular risk, like for example, heart attack or stroke or all those atherosclerosis. And for the longest time, we've been blaming the bad cholesterol. So with lipid profile, it is something that was extracted from the blood after you fasted for 10 hours, 10 to 12 hours. So before, were you able to get the lipid profile before?
Yes.
Yes. Were you on keto already or fasting then? Not yet, right? And how does it feel to fast for 10 to 12 hours? You felt like it was really hard already. But now, on your day-to-day, how long do you fast on a regular basis?
Pinakamatagal ko doon, mga 22 hours.
22 hours. And then average would be?
16.
16. And that's already 6 hours fast. Nakagipin na yung 16. Yes. And if you can just recall the time that your lipid profile was taken, 10 hours, parang akala mo mamamatay ka na. Like, you really have to eat double right after because you really feel like you really fasted. But with this lifestyle, with intermittent fasting, and even I know you've tried more than 24 hours already, not by choice sometimes because you've been so busy, but you can see that you can really survive even if you fast that long. Anyway, going back to our lipid profile, your lipid profile will usually be divided into 4. So you have total cholesterol, you have LDL or low density lipoproteins, you have HDL or high density lipoproteins, and you have triglycerides. So that's 4. So total cholesterol is the estimated sum of these 3. Okay, because you cannot really exactly measure each cholesterol, but you can just sum it up. So don't be afraid if you have a total cholesterol that's very high. If you will just look at it instantly, you might say that you might have a high risk of heart attack because you have total cholesterol. But this is the most important part. You have to know the specific increases, which is increased or elevated. Is it the HDL? Is it the LDL? Or is it the triglycerides? Because they will differ. Among these 3, honestly, they are not really good or bad. They are simply blood cholesterol. But they become bad if you already have existing problem within your body, that is inflammation. And inflammation is brought about by too much insulin and too much sugar in the body. There are case studies of like a man who has familial hypercholesterolemia, shooting very, very high cholesterol since the beginning, since he was diagnosed, but he was never given any medications to lower the cholesterol. So it was an all-time high, unimaginable high, but it was paired with low blood sugar, low insulin. He lived more than 70, more than 80 at the top of his health. So we can see that these cholesterol are actually not really bad. None of them is really bad, but they become bad only if we pair them with the wrong kind of food, which is sugar and carbohydrates. But for the sake of discussion, what usually they refer when they say bad cholesterol is actually the LDL and the triglycerides. Why? Because they are the ones that can lump or can block your blood vessel if there is already inflammation going on. So they become bad. Again, remember that they only become bad if you already have a pre-existing condition that is predisposing your blood vessel to have obstruction from cholesterol build-up. But cholesterol alone, even if it's high actually, it won't cause blockage. It will just keep on flowing in your bloodstream smoothly, especially if you are keto adapted or what we call as fat adapted. Meaning, when we say fat adapted, your body is actually no longer dependent on glucose. You are already consuming fats coming or energy coming from ketone. So for those of you who might just be watching this for the first time, glucose is not the only source of our energy, but we can also have another source of energy, which is from fats. Okay, so can you check the connection? I think our laptop baka na-touch lang. It's okay. check na lang for ano. Anyway, before we proceed, blessed afternoon, we will talk about more how come they consider LDL as bad, how come they consider triglyceride as bad, how come HDL is considered as good, and why I consider all of them actually as just neutral cholesterol. But it's up to us if we make them really bad or really good. So before we proceed, I would like to say hi and hello to Melody Padua. Continues to thank you, and of course self-love. Sharon Roldan, Grace Ann, and Macantaro Aloe Vera. Have a blessed afternoon to you. And G. Dalamar, nagdamo naggit ang na-learn ko sa imong advice regarding sa food to stay healthy. I'm glad that you are able to learn something, Miss G. And interested topics, Dr. I want my family, siblings encouraged to do low-carb lifestyle. So, if you want your family and friends to do low-carb and fasting lifestyle as well, try to share this in your page. Also, don't forget to like Keto Mom PH. They have the best keto products here in Bacolod. Soon, it will be nationwide.
Yes, hopefully.
Yes, it will be available. Yes, it will be available nationwide. And of course, you can get inspirations from there. And they also have certain products that can be shipped nationwide, so you can use that. As for going back to our cholesterol, the difference between HDL and LDL, high density and low density, right? So they are named according to their weight. High density lipoprotein is high density, meaning it weighs heavier. It is heavier as compared to LDL. And why is it heavier? It is because the protein content is bigger as compared to LDL. So DL or LDL, low density lipoprotein. So the L there is lipoprotein. So it's a molecule combined with protein and fats. Okay. So the low density has bigger cholesterol, bigger lipid component as compared to the small protein component. Whereas the HDL or high density has bigger protein component and smaller cholesterol. And it is considered as good cholesterol. The high density lipoprotein is considered as good cholesterol because it can have the capacity to get the extra cholesterol that's been carried by HDL. So it can take the load of LDL and it can become as an MDL or medium density lipoprotein. But we no longer measure that because it's somewhat an intermediate kind of lipoprotein that's not that many when it comes to number. So triglycerides is something that we look into that should be kept at all-time low. Okay, so even if your total cholesterol is elevated, as long as your triglyceride is low and your triglycerides to HDL ratio is at least 1:1. So it shouldn't be that triglycerides is higher than HDL. Okay, so I don't know if you can still recall your last Lipid Profile. That's been a long time now, no? That's been a long time. And yes, yeah, you don't really have to. And we are actually more in tune with our body. We know if we feel a little extra tired, if we feel uneasy, and right now we really know what to do.
Yes.
If sometimes there's a celebration that you can eat extra carbs, we really feel it. We've become so carbohydrate sensitive that we know we are already putting a lot of burden in our body whenever we eat extra carbs. But it's okay, don't worry, because we have a natural feasting season. We have a natural harvest time. So our body can actually tolerate once in a while high carb intake. As long as in a span of a year, in a span of 1 month, you are into low carb most of the time. We make high carb or the standard American balanced diet as the exemption. we make low carb as the rule, and we just make the high carb meals as an exemption, just reserve it for special occasions or maybe some certain events that we cannot really get away from. But it's just funny. I think I find it funny that we consider high carb as a treat, somewhat as a treat, when we know that it's damaging our bodies. But we understand it's also coming from the pleasure centers in our mouth. So it is something that we can actually try to improve on when it comes to thinking. We can educate ourselves, and the moment we educate ourselves, we know that the right food is really the one that nourishes our body and not the one that kills it. Okay? So more on cholesterol. Triglyceride is actually the main source of energy of our heart. Okay, so it's that's why there are what we say as cardio workout. So cardio workout is the one that's burning fats. So what they say as the ones that keeps on burning fats. It is because the primary fuel used by our heart is the triglycerides. So if you are an athlete, for example, and you are also doing keto and you're also into low carb, some can benefit also from taking in MCT oil, medium chain triglycerides. Okay. But we have to differentiate. How come most people in low carb have elevated LDL that is already considered beyond the normal levels of LDL as standard normal level of LDL? And should we really be afraid? But what we understand now is we really shouldn't be afraid, as long as it is not paired with elevated insulin that's been causing the insulin resistance and also metabolic syndrome that is linked to heart attack, cardiovascular diseases, cardiovascular illness, stroke. All those are byproducts, even fatty liver. They're all interconnected. So I hope that answers bad and good cholesterol.
Pero Doc, okay lang na mataas ang cholesterol?
So yes, the question is, okay lang ba na mataas yung cholesterol mo? First, it will be different as to how high it is, okay? So with the example I gave a while ago, there's a case study of one person with familial hypercholesterolemia. I think I would like to say thank you to Sir Alan Pura, our very diligent science researcher. No? Siya yung pinaka-ultimate na nag-help sa atin with our research and updates when it comes to scientific journals on this. So there is this person who has been diagnosed with elevated hypercholesterolemia and no signs of cardiovascular disease because there is this index of risk of heart attack. So before it's just the level of cholesterol, but now there are many other factors. For example, the CRP or the C-reactive protein, which dictates the capacity or the risk assessment of one person having heart attack. So it is now been proven that as long as your inflammatory levels is low, even if your cholesterol is high, you're actually safe.
Basta Doc, basta kahit na mataas ang cholesterol mo, pero alam mong hindi ka nag-high carb.
Yes, actually that's the best gauge. So for example, right now I actually don't weigh myself much. I no longer think of so many other measurements I used to have before. As long as I stick with my low carb plans, as long as I don't take sugar, as long as I don't, as long as I eat my low carb keto meals as clean as possible, then I shouldn't worry, because all of those it will just neutralize. It will just put you in a normal state, on an optimal health state. Your cholesterol is actually expected to increase when you are fat adapted, because that's the time that your body is fueling on fats. It's getting the fuel that it needs, the ketones that it needs, coming from fats. Just like a person with diabetes that is dependent in glucose, they have an all-time high of glucose because their body is so dependent on glucose. It's just that having elevated glucose and having glucose as the only source of energy is not sustainable, because it will have so many other side effects, and that would include inflammation, poor healing when it comes to infection, even tumor genesis, and all those allergies and tumors. That's why it is a common incident when one is already diagnosed with diabetes, especially those who are already insulin dependent. So they actually don't need insulin because their body has been an all-time high insulin, but their cells has just been resistant. It's no longer sensitive to insulin. So instead of we make those cells become sensitive to insulin so that it will act normally, what does standard medical management now is add more insulin. So that too much insulin is actually the one that's triggering the elevated tumorigenesis. That's why so many diabetic patients are now known as cancer patients. They don't even die of diabetes, but many of them die of cancer. And if you investigate further, they have been known to have diabetes for 10 years, for 15 years, but been very dependent on medications, not addressing the root cause, which is actually just the basic, just our food. Just our food. And that is the most important thing, I think, for me. That's why we are celebrating today, because today marks the knowledge, that time, it's like the Eureka moment when we finally get to know that we can actually take care of our own health. Because as a family, we always say that these illnesses are familial, and we thought before that it's because of genetics, but now we know that it's not just about genetics. These diseases are considered familial diseases because families eat together, have the same lifestyle, have the same food preference, and you know that it's different now. With you have your own family now, and you made your own empire of keto mom, and you can really tell the difference. I also have a close family of ours. All of them in the family are known diabetics with so many other comorbidities, but one of them decided to go low carb, and her health just turned up. It's like she lost the last 10 years of her age. She looked so young, and no more medications whatsoever. But all the other siblings who still wouldn't change their habits, 4 of them already passed away, and then the rest are still dependent on medicine, and I think a couple of them are now on insulin. But we know we can't force them, even if they're our family. So what we can do is just pray for them and continue what we do. So we try to educate and we try to inform. So aside from good and bad cholesterol, triglycerides is something that can be converted into glucose. Did you know? Triglycerides by its name, triglycerides. So it's a 3-acylglycerol. There's a molecule of fats together with a glycerol. It's a glucose. So the carrier, instead of the lipoprotein, which the carrier is protein, this time triglycerides, the carrier component is a glycerol or a carbohydrate. So whenever your body is actually needing glucose, say for example for our brain, because our brain will always be partly dependent on glucose, and sometimes those people who are not into low carb are capitalizing on that. Have you heard people saying that you should eat glucose because your brain is dependent on glucose, right? And partly they are right, but not 100% of our brain. In fact, those who are fasting and those who are on full keto can actually feed their brain the energy coming from ketones up to 70%. So our body can function, our brain actually can function better, clearer, more focused when it's feeding on ketones, when it's feeding on fats, and not solely on glucose. And the 30% glucose, we actually don't need to eat it from our plates. Our body can create its own glucose, either from glycogen in our liver, from the glycerol of triglycerides, and also even from certain proteins. And don't worry, you don't need to fear losing muscles. For those of you who are muscular, who are bodybuilders, you don't need to be afraid. You don't need to be afraid to lose your muscles, because your muscles will be protected. The proteins that will be converted into glucose are actually the extra proteins. What are these extra proteins? These are redundant and unimportant proteins that's actually like blocking our brain. The one that's causing brain fog, the one that's causing dementia, the Lewy bodies, the amyloid deposits. Those are redundant proteins. What else are examples of redundant proteins? Tumors, the cancers, those are redundant proteins that can actually be used up by our body if only we give it time to make sure and cleanse its system. And there's two ways to do that. Either you do full fasting, or if you cannot fast, what we always say is you eat keto. You eat keto. Keto diet is like a fast mimicking diet. If you cannot fast, you cannot say no to food at all, at least you choose the right kind of foods, okay? So why do we eat cholesterol and we are not afraid? It is because cholesterol alone is not bad. It will actually not cause any damage in your body as long as you don't pair it with carbohydrates. Eating high cholesterol foods will only make you have more energy, will feed your hormones and your other organs that's needing sustenance, because there is such a thing as essential fats. Essential fats meaning the fats that we need to take in. There are fats that we cannot make our own. Say for example, the ones in omega-3. Okay, so omega-3 is another form of fat. So to differentiate, fats and cholesterol are both under lipids. It's like under lipids, but they are of different types. But in general, they are under the label of lipids because of their consistency. The oily texture, the slimy texture, that's that.
Fish oil.
Yes, fish oil. Fish oil is very high in omega-3, so that's why we take that in. And also,
that's also cholesterol.
It's under fats. Okay, so it's under fats.
Prescribe sa akin yung ko.
Yes, because that is a good kind. That's a good kind of fats. And by nature, sabi nila, cholesterol, you can only take from animal fats. Okay, so including pork, including chicken, so fatted fish. So that's included. But if you want, so we understand, like one of our friends who suggested this. So, hi mga guapa. Hello, guapa Flo. So, siya yan. So, hello Flo, who suggested this topic actually. I think she had a low elevated total cholesterol, elevated LDL, but not really elevated. It's just somewhat a little higher than the normal. I've seen so many even that's way higher, but they're actually quite sensitive. Especially now, it's just like funny because they're worried that her triglycerides is extra low. So imagine the triglycerides is extra low. So actually that's somewhat very, very protective, because triglycerides, if it's too much elevated, that's the one that is actually linked to cardiovascular diseases. But low triglycerides is not something to be afraid of. But if you want to increase that, so yes, you can take in extra like MCT oil or coconut oil, because those are healthy oils. Okay, so if you have questions when it comes to cholesterol, kindly put it in the comment section so we can appreciate it even further. So ano po ba? Do you still have other things that you remember?
Actually, naalala ko nung dati pa doon, hindi ko ano low carb. Parang, I'm not sure ba't ako nagpala, pero mataas ang cholesterol ko.
Oh.
And then, last June, na-hospital ako due to the miscarriage. Normal ang ano ko.
Normal. Okay.
So, ibig sabihin nga, it's due to the high carb.
Yes, that is also true, no? That's why I think yung isa, why would they not be afraid? Why they shouldn't be afraid to eat cholesterol? Yeah, bakit daw hindi tataas yung cholesterol nila when they're eating keto? When keto and low carb is mostly elevated in cholesterol. Why? This is because we are functioning hormonally. We are based on hormones, and we are not just based simply on calories. So between three, no, I think we always talk about that. So there's three macronutrients: sugar or carbohydrates or glucose. For the sake of this discussion, they will be the same entity: sugar, carbohydrates, and glucose. Then we also have proteins or amino acids. Example would be meat, or if eggs, the white in egg is protein. And the last one is fats or cholesterol or lipids. Okay, so the yellow in egg is fats or cholesterol. So
takot kainin.
Yes, they are afraid. They are afraid. Yes, I would like to eat with them so that bigay nila sa akin yung yellow part or yung yolk portion. For me, we have members of Life Without Rice eating 6 eggs, 8 eggs, even 10 eggs a day, but on OMAD, meaning 1 meal a day. They take that under the same meal time, under in a span of 1 to 2 hours, and then they stop and they eat the next day. So why you shouldn't be afraid to eat cholesterol? It's okay, because the trigger that will signal that your cholesterol will not cause blockage, that your cholesterol can be used as energy, that it will not cause you trouble, it will not cause heart attack, heart disease, or other cardiovascular outcome like atherosclerosis, is when you eat it without carbohydrates, okay, without carbohydrates. Because why? Eating carbohydrates or eating sugar, eating glucose will spike insulin. And you know what's the other name of insulin? Fat storage hormone. Okay? Fat storage hormone. Fat storage hormone or fat storing hormone. Meaning, whenever there is insulin, your cholesterol will never be used up as energy. It will never be utilized. It will only be preserved. Because insulin will signal storage. It will always make you save that fat for the rainy days, initially for the fasting days that we are supposed to have. Because as we always say, we go back with our evolution, and our evolution actually dictates that we should be fasting oftentimes in a year. Supposedly, harvest season, the ones where we take in carbohydrates and have elevated insulin in our body, only happens once every season a year. So that's harvest season. Yes. Harvest season meaning natural time when the fruit bear tree, without fertilizer, without GMO, without any other import-export happening. Okay? So these harvest season only occur once a year. So that is supposedly the only time that your body can accommodate insulin. But after that, you should be fasting. But if you are eating carbohydrates every day of your life for the last year, it will appear like your body is on at all time harvest season. So what does harvest season mean? Pataba, okay, hibernation. So that's why you're always conserving that fat, and you always feel so sleepy. You always feel so sleepy and always hungry. It's just too ironic that the one person who is already overweight, who already looks so nourished, is also the one that's so hungry. And the one that's thin, and the one that's actually not eating all the time, the one that looks somewhat malnourished, or actually doesn't have the appetite to keep on eating. Yes. Because actually the one that with normal or even lower body weight is actually appetite corrected, because they don't have that extra fats in their body, because that extra fats actually also produces what we call as leptin insensitivity. So leptin is a hormone that makes us feel full. Okay, it sends us a signal that we have already eaten enough, that we are already full, that we are satisfied with what we eat. Yes, and that's also the saddest part, the mental mindset, that they are afraid to go hungry even if they're already full, even if they are still full and they're already preparing for the food, that maybe later I will get hungry.
Ito, actually, may mga iba na they do intermittent fasting.
Yes, they do. Yes. Yes, okay. So, yes, as what Jean said, there are those who do intermittent fasting, but they are still on a high-carb diet. And why is this something to be afraid of? First, that's what I always say. If you want optimum health, you can do both fasting and at the same time low-carb. But if you can't commit to doing both, at least do at least one of them, and then later on you have to do both. But initially you can start with one. The problem with those who are doing intermittent fasting alone but not low carb is that during the time that they are doing intermittent fasting, they will never be fat adapted, meaning they will always crave for sugar. They will always depend on sugar as a form of energy. So with fasting, especially for those of you who have read the book, we know that, for example, if you are fasting totally or you're doing keto totally, after you consume the sugar in your body, you will slowly go to a phase where you consume your fats. Yes. But if you are always doing intermittent fasting but still eating carbohydrates, you will never get past on the fat burning phase. You will never get past on that. But you will stagnate on that area where, yes, of course, you will still be burning a little more because you will be eating less, but it will never become enough. There will always be a weight stall. There will always be a stall when it comes to health. Healing will not be optimized. It will never be maximized because you will stagnate on that phase where you will always be glucose dependent. That tendency will also give the risk of muscle loss, okay? Because you will only, if ever you will not eat so much, you will stagnate actually in the phase of gluconeogenesis. So gluconeogenesis is your body keep on producing glucose. And that glucose, if ever the redundant proteins that we mentioned a while ago will already be depleted, that extra proteins might come from your muscles. So actually those people who keep on losing weight might actually be losing muscles instead of fats. That's why it is important that if you want to optimize your health, if you want to maximize the effect of intermittent fasting, you do low carb. Because that way you are sustaining the benefit that you got from that period of fasting. Whereas if you do high carb after, you might just actually offset. So it's for me, it's a waste. It's sayang that you were already able to do the fasting, but you weren't able to follow it up with the right nutrition. That's why those who are doing that are starving the whole time. They are very eager to break their fast because their body is so hungry and looking for glucose, and that's the sad part. But when you're low carb, when you're fat adapted, actually you can extend. And can you notice that, like for example, after you ate a high carb meal,
so nag-try ako.
the harder
ako. Nag-iba-iba yung nag-diarrhea ako. So, iba yung feeling ko. I had to sleep early para hindi ko na maramdaman. Pero yun nga, Doc, it's because low carb adapted.
Sanay na yung katawan mo with low carb. And that's also the time because when you are into low carb for so long, you're actually very insulin sensitive. And that's not a bad thing. It's just that if you don't slowly break your fast, for example, or if you don't slowly take in the glucose, like for example, right then and there, after a month of doing low carb, suddenly you ate a high carb cake, it will be a sudden rush of insulin in your body. You can actually risk yourself from hypoglycemia. It would be such a, parang for others, no, it will be such a big question. How come you will go into hypoglycemia when you just eaten a high carb cake?
Yes.
It is because the moment you eat that, your insulin will spike up.
Yes.
And it will immediately, very fast, withdraw all the sugar in your blood and put it inside your cells. So you are actually endangering yourself from the too much insulin response in comparison with the carbohydrate that you took. Especially that sugar might stay in your system for a short while, but insulin can stay there up to 18 hours. So for the next 18 hours, for those of you who have experienced this, let me know if you've experienced it. For example, if you've been doing intermittent fasting and you're doing low carb, and suddenly you decide to doing high carb, were you able to notice that after a high carb meal, your fasting the next day is somewhat harder?
Yes.
No, it's somewhat harder. You feel if you've been into low carb for so long, when you wake up in the morning empty stomach, you feel okay.
Yes.
But if you ate, mas masarap, magaan, masarap, and no pain, no aches and pain whatsoever. But if you eat a high carb meal, say for example at night time, the moment you wake up the next day, you will really feel the aches and pain, and you will feel very hungry. Even if you eat, that's the reason why we ate. When you eat too much, you even go hungry the next day. Whereas if you went on an empty stomach, when you wake up the next morning, you're okay. Especially if you're into low carb, because your body is actually already fueled in ketones. And when you're fueled into ketones, you are already not feeling hungry because your The energy that your body needs is being sustained by your body fats, and that can come from your cholesterol. And cholesterol is not bad, okay? For some, they might be afraid, but actually, cholesterol is part of the normal human diet. We are built to eat cholesterol. Of course, it is true also that cholesterol can be made by our own bodies, okay? So that's why also it is not that essential to really eat it, okay? But we cannot have cholesterol all the time. We must eat cholesterol in order to form cholesterol. It's just that we have to make sure that the cholesterol that we make are also the ones that we utilize into coming into energy. But the bad part is that when we take cholesterol and we pair it up together with insulin spiking foods, and those cholesterol that you make will just be there. It will stagnate, and it will cause all the troubles that we are afraid. So before we proceed, let's continue with our greetings here. And Marby watching from Batangas. Hello. Hello, Amabel. Amabel is also in Cebu, I'm sure. And our dear Chloe of Japan. Doc, no sweets ako in almost a month na and stay low carb. Bakit po kaya mabagal ang weight loss ko? Okay, for weight loss, even without sweets, you can check, Marby, if you are actually eating enough food in comparison with your physical activity. If you want to keep on losing weight, you can check also if you need to do more exercise to compensate for your food, or you can cut down your food. As long as it's keto, it's okay. But also, one thing for those who stalled in weight loss, you might actually be gaining muscle mass, okay? So if you are exercising already, know that muscle weighs heavier than fat. So you may actually look, or you may actually weigh heavier, but you will actually look thinner or fitter. It's because of muscle mass. So you look into that and try to see also, you might just be looking into the wrong gauge, because for all you know, you're already at your optimum BMI or body mass index, or another gauge of health that we know is our waist circumference. That is your waistline, umbilical level, navel level natin, yung pusod, yun dapat. So dapat yung pusod level, waistline natin is not more than half of our height. So if your height is, for example, your height is 60 inches, so your waistline should be 30 or less. So that you will have a lower risk of heart attack. Okay? So even if you don't take your cholesterol, especially for males, kasi for males na, especially in our workforce, and mga lolo, tito, mga papa, sometimes they are what we call as tofi, thin outside but fat inside. So they actually have lean extremities, but their tummies are so big. Yun ang tawag natin as central obesity. Okay, and that is even more dangerous actually. So Sharon, I hope that answers your question, Marby. I will try din yung 21 days na nagawa mong no sweets at all. Yes, okay. Because once you were able to do it, you will really see that you will not be afraid. You can even go back to eating sweets from time to time, knowing that you are not dependent on it, that you can actually live without it. And you make sweets as really treats, and you make that as a symbol of special day, like today. Yes, special day. So, Richelle Pagadiwan Domingo, pag po ba normal range po result ng SGPT, ibig sabihin po ba wala na pong fatty liver? So fatty liver is actually microscopic and ultrasonographic finding, meaning it can be found in the microscope and in your ultrasound, wherein meron talagang identified fats in your liver. So there are conversion of your normal liver with a lot of fat deposits. So SGPT is one of the enzymes normally produced by your liver. So if your liver is no longer functioning optimally, it can have increase in SGPT, meaning there are some of like bursting of parts of your liver wherein those SGP that's supposedly at low level, it might increase. There's overproduction or seepage. Parang nagsisip siya outside your bloodstream. So having a normal SGPT doesn't mean that you already have a normal, not having fatty liver. But it's just that your liver is functioning normally, mostly. But it's not just SGPT. You should also have SGOT or ALT, AST. Yun ang other names nila. Okay? Low, LDL is 139. So our upper limit is in LDL, it will depend. It can be as some nga up to 150 yung normal LDL, but I think on your laboratory it's low, no? So LDL 62 ang HDL, triglycerides is 25. So nice, diba? Yes. With this, almost more than twice yung level ng triglycerides. Triglycerides is only 25 and HDL is 62. So even if i1:2 mo yan, that is supposedly HDL 50 lang. So sa kanya, more than 1:2. So actually, your risk for heart attack is really, really low if we base it on HDL to triglycerides ratio. That's really nice. So I'm not taking that tablet at all kasi binigyan siya ng tablet to lower that down. And I find it so, why would you change a very good result? But anyway, we have different gauge. And for those of you, as a disclaimer, although I'm a doctor and I'm a physician, but I do this as part of my advocacy and as part of helping people be more knowledgeable. But this will not replace your own doctor's prescriptions or your own doctor's advice. If you want, you can book an appointment for consultation. But as of now, this is plainly for educational purposes. Hello, sweet girl. Do you miss your mommy na ba? You want your mommy there na? You watch Pito, mom. Hi. You watch Pito. You watch the live. Your mommy will be there. Okay. Hi. Na-miss na? Okay, so Michelle, Queen Elizabeth II only eats fruits in season. Wow! And she's 94! I didn't know that. Galing-galing ni Queen Elizabeth. Fruits in season in England. Tayo kaya. Philippines, I think we have 2. Parang 2 yung harvest season natin. Yes. So, we're good. Swerte tayo. And Melanie, hi doc, I've completed my 21 days of OMAD. Why? Wow, that's so nice. You prescribed to me to do OMAD. Kasi Melanie had consulted with me the early part of January. Nakalain mo 21 days na, parang kailan na yun? Oo. You prescribed me to do OMAD till mid-Feb for healing and weight loss. I would like to start doing HIIT, but I'm worried it might increase cortisol. Is it okay to do HIIT? How do I go about my workout? HIIT is high-intensity interval training. It's actually one of the best ways to do your exercise. Do you do HIIT na ba? Na-stop lang. But you tried, and it's really good, no?
Yes.
So, nakakapagod na lang. Pero that's the essence din. No, dapat mapagod talaga. Because when you're doing HIIT, we are actually trying to mimic. Parang sinisimulate natin yung 100 times na lakad-lakad. If you're keep on moving around, it's like as nomads before, maraming walking or maraming lakad. Lumalakad tayo, naghahanap ng hagod. And the moment we find something to hunt, dun na yung adrenaline, yung very, very fast, short burst of adrenaline. And that's why HIIT works. Kaya wala ka dito papunta sa bahay mo, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Malayo.
Pwede siguro daw, itatry ko.
Parang ngayon, papagalitan ganyan. So, it's always a breath of fresh air listening to you. Akala mo naman kung saan siya, no? Healthy living starts with healthy eating. Thanks, Doc. Also to our beloved Keto Mom, Jinja. Your place is so cozy, and keto foods are all delicious, and nandiyan talaga siya. Oh, si Mother yan. Nag-comment na sa likod lang namin. Annabelle Vicky Duhan, ang ganda na mata ko, Doc, na makakain ako ng pandesal. Never na ako nag-try. Yes! That's what I said, no? My allergic rhinitis and allergic rhinoconjunctivitis. So, rhinitis sa ilong lang, conjunctivitis sa mata. So, my allergic rhinoconjunctivitis, I cannot really deny kapag nakakain ako ng sobrang carbs. Or kahit hindi naman talaga sobra, I think 50 grams of carbs, parang na-activate na yung allergies ko. I really should keep it 20 grams and below. Or else, mangangatay na talaga. So,
mura na.
Oo. Buti na lang. We always have our alternatives available. Emma, is the fat in beef bad cholesterol? Okay, yun. So, fat in beef, ano yung talo ba? Ang tawag sa, lard yung sa ano ba? Ang beef sa, basta yung fat sa beef, no? Kung masama ba siya. Ang sinasabi natin, cholesterol in animal products, and especially fats, the ones coming from pork, chicken oil, beef, they only become bad if you eat it together with carbohydrates, or if you eat it too much of it with also too much protein. Kasi excess protein can also have insulin spike. Kasi extra protein can be converted into glucose. Yung katawan natin, hindi yan basta-basta nag-store ng protein. The only storing of proteins will be through muscles. At hindi siya mag-store ng proteins if wala ka nag-exercise, if hindi ka nag-exercise. So if you want to take in extra proteins and have an extra protein na store, you exercise. But otherwise, if you don't do that, if you want to eat that alone or with minimal proteins, and if you want to, for example, na upumay ka na, if you want to dilute it para make it more savory, you can pair it up with our green leafy vegetables as our best option, okay? But if you want to eat that, you want to also burn them as well by doing extra cardio, because too much of everything, kahit neutral sila, but if it's already too much, it will also not result in anything good. So that can still be a source of possible too much elevation of cholesterol. Although, as we said, as long as you can stick with low carb, don't need to worry naman. Okay? So Ronald, did you go for it? Yes.
If you eat beef, konti lang naman, is ang hard.
Yeah.
Pero hindi mo na
at saka hindi ka naman talaga makakain like a bowl full of beef fats. Parang imposible naman.
Especially if they use it with low carb.
Yeah. Your appetite mo, you can kasi
parang lang Dok, parang masatisfy na yung craving mo, makakain ka na.
Yeah. So that is actually what we call as appetite correction. Yung sinasabi ni Gino na yung kapag nakakain ka na, hindi na sobrang na kapag nakahit na sa buffet ka, sobrang dami talaga. You can only eat so much. That is what we call appetite correction. Because when you are already appetite corrected, you will feel when you already have enough. Kasi before actually, we have that as well. It's just that instead of listening to our body telling us we've had enough, ano yung ginagawa natin? Kain muna ako ng matamis pa, wala ng umay. Pagkatapos na wala ng tamis, kakain ka na ulit ng babalik ka na sa maalat. And then after, matamis na naman ulit. So we tend to overeat. But when in fact, if we only focus on ourselves and we feel when we already eaten enough, you cannot eat so much. You will just normalize your weight. Weight is just a very superficial gauge, no? Don't get stagnated. Huwag kayong magpadala sa weight lang. That is a very, very loose and very, very superficial gauge of health. No? We have other forms of health, no? Like sharpness of your brain, how you function, your breathlessness, no chest pain, no joint pains. You don't feel sleepy during the day, alertness. Those are very good signs of health, no? So hindi lang basta weight. So is the fat in beef bad cholesterol? It is just cholesterol. It can be bad if you eat it with the wrong kinds of food, but it can be good if you use it up for energy. One way to boost your energy is to do cardio workout or even just mental thinking. You solve so many sudokos, gagana yung brain mo.
For 2 years, Dok, ako wala ang BP ko, hindi siya nagtataas dahil sabi nga nila, di ba? Pataas yung BP mo kasi
yes, when you're
hindi, ako never tumaas. Nung napagod lang ako.
Okay, so that is stress.
Yes.
Okay, so with that example,
but sa food, hindi
siya related. Yes. Okay, so that's your own testimony, and that is actually backed up by science. Cholesterol is not the one that's causing elevated blood pressure.
No.
But cholesterol will be bad if merong inflammation that makes the blood vessel diseased, no? Parang meron siyang sakit. So the inflammation coming from the sugar brought about by insulin will be the one that will cause stiffness in our blood vessel. So hindi na siya nag-expand, hindi na siya nag-relax. So that can cause liliit yung caliber ng blood vessel, so yung pressure tataas din. So there are so many factors. Major factor is food intake. So you've been on low carb for so long, and your BP is proven and tested at all-time low. Kami din, kami lahat. Yung pinakamataas na BP namin, 110 siguro. But regularly, 90-60. We even go as low as 18-50. As long as hindi kami nahihilo, we know we are okay.
Pero yung nakatakutan ko ngayon. Ang rice.
Ano?
Rice. Ang rice ang kinakatakutan ko.
Yun talaga. At tama na yung kinakatakutan mo. We should really be afraid of rice, no? Yung meron pa silang isang kinakawawa, yung asin. Sabi nila masama daw yung asin. Yes, although we are talking about cholesterol, but it's still also, they are somewhat, sila yung aping-apini salt.
I think dapat mas matapak sa sugar.
Yes, there's this book yung title nga niya, Pure, White, and Deadly. So akala ng iba, asin yun, yung pure, white, and deadly, but the real pure, white, and deadly is really sugar and not the cholesterol. Kasi pure white din ang cholesterol, di ba? Mabuti rin yung taba. Not the cholesterol, not the salt, but it's actually the sugar. So it's good. So that is your testimony, and we've seen it, and it is really true. It's not the cholesterol that's causing problems, that's causing high blood pressure, but it is the sugar, it is the carbs that we eat them with. And yes, it gets complicated. The moment you eat cholesterol together with carbohydrates, then that is also the worst kind of combination. Okay? So, hindi rin sinasabing mas okay na mag-carbohydrates alone ka na lang, but actually, you should really just remove carbohydrates or put it into minimum. As in, minimal talaga. Kung pwede nga lang, wala. And then, you just save the carbohydrates as incidental carbohydrates. Like, for example, in our breads, the ones, the few, less than a gram of per serving of aming flour ng milk na loaf or bread, no? So, hindi talaga kailangan bilangin ang carbohydrates as long as you keep it at all-time low.
Siguro din kasi they are used to for them, it's not
Yun nga yung ano natin yung eating carbohydrates is actually not nutritional. It's just that yung pinakasad, we are so used with eating carbohydrates, not nutritionally, not based on our biochem, not based on what our body needs, but just based on sa nakasanayan natin, yung pinalakihan natin. And sadly, yung pinalakihan natin is hindi tama sa ating katawan. Hindi tama sa ating biology, but tama siya sa food industry na kumikita dahil sa ganyang food choices. Okay? It is what they say. The food manufacturers just want to get a piece of your food plate. At if ever you will consider having that kind of food in your day-to-day plate, imagine billions of people doing that all at once. So yes, it is a possibility talaga, no? May possibility talaga that these knowledge will be suppressed, these knowledge will be kept hidden. So if you know this, you will also have the responsibility to share this with as many people as we can. Kahit sabihin mo pang walang makikinig sa'yo, walang maniniwala sa'yo, I will back you up. We will back you up now. We will back you up and we will do our best so that hindi mo, kasi it would be unfair to the future generations. Kasi tayo, naloko na tayo Si Maming naloko na si Maming yon. Na kumakain siya ng rice. Kahit buti na yung baboy lang. But naloko si Maming at naloko tayo. But buti na lang, it's not too late for us to improve, to change. We have the option to say no on those foods na hindi talaga essential sa ating katawan, nutritionally speaking, okay? So, Ronald de Mayuga for 2, congrats, another level of learning na naman. Thank you. Watching from Singapore. Ay, magkasama pala kayo dyan, Sir Limon G. Lizelle Mags has so much love for you. Thanks, Food Doc. Thanks, Richelle. And congratulations on second casting anniversary. Tita Maming from Flo. And Kim Poy Palaboy, good evening also to you, Sir. Please like and share also. Yes, thank you so much. Always thank you for that. Always thankful for the tips. Thank you, Marby. And hi, Park Shen. Mayong gabi, the praise. Mayong gabi. Mayong gabi. Kaninyong tanan. Mayong gabi. Kung diri sa Bacolod. And also, magandang gabi for those of you who are in the Philippines. And good evening to the rest of the world. We are actually live via Global TV Network. And also, we have Kuno, Good People TV. So we have simultaneous casting to London, New York, Asia, Filipino radio channels, and also in Brazil. I think we have some in South America. So thank you so much. I hope you get to appreciate some of our contents here. We still have a few minutes left, but if you think you still have other things you want to clarify or you want to emphasize when it comes to our way of life, no? And
Pupunta na lang kita to.
Okay.
By the way, si Doktora has a clinic already.
Yes. Our clinic is already open.
Meron someone na tutulong na sa atin to masagot yung mga tanong natin.
Yes. And that's why we are also doing this live, no? Kahit medyo busy tayo, we have this live episode 3 times a week. And I'm so happy Chi was very open na dito natin gawin. And it's a very special episode kasi nga, it's our fasting anniversary. It's been 2 years since the first time we did our first ever extended fasting. Magkasama kami ni Mami. Mami was already 63 then, going 64. 4 days and half yung first extended fasting namin. Water and salt only. And we were still alive so far. Yun na, wala naman kami maintenance medications. But we only have maintenance low-carb foods. No? And we have treats, sweet treats, and very sumptuous foods na I'm so happy that's already available here in Bacolod. And thanks to my good friend Jean Joy for opening up this store. Kasi once there is an establishment like this, it somewhat becomes easier for people to accept, no? So you are not just opening a business, but you are opening up hope. You are helping in opening the minds of people. Yes. So we start here in Bacolod, and we are glad that it's already been spreading all over the world. We might even be a little too late, but it's okay. As what's important is we start this journey. So I hope you get to appreciate this episode, and you get to share this way of life to starting with your friends and loved ones, and of course yourself. It's so hard to keep on convincing others if they see you not doing it yourself. So if you want to help your mothers, your fathers, your siblings, even your children have optimum life, you start with yourself. So February 1, happy fasting anniversary, happy heart month to everyone, and happy self-love month for the whole, for each of our audience and listeners and followers, and we thank you so much. Sharon Rodan, thank you very much. Always more learnings from you. So if you have special topics that you want to be discussed in our next episode, next Wednesday and next Friday, feel free to send me a message and we will look. I'll visit you one day, Kito Mom. Please taste Yeah, so I think we are already 1 minute past our episode.
Doc?
Yes, my love.
Sa akin din, Doc, it's not just self-love, but also yung mga importante sa buhay natin.
Yeah, loved ones talaga. Yes. At saka yun nga sabi ko, it only starts with self-love, but it's actually not a selfish love, because the moment you love yourself, it also includes all the things that you love, the people that you love, and even the advocacies and causes that you love. If you have a charity that you want to support, you cannot continue to love them, you cannot continue to support them if your health is already at risk. So, taking care of yourself is actually taking care of your family and loved ones.
You have to start.
You have to start talaga.
Yes.
So, yung pagtaas ng BP niya, sa stress lang yun. So, stress is also, buti na lang meron ng maraming mga assistant builders dito na sobrang, it comes with the right mentor, and I'm sure you are mentoring them well. No? So, try to let go na muna and chill a little. Kasi, alam niyo ba, that stress is really, really bad for the health. Na meron nga nagsabi, you can even eat a burger than think bad thoughts. Oh. Ganon ka grabe yung bad thoughts and stress. So, it's important that as we do this way of life, as we we choose low carb, we also choose good thoughts, no?
Yes.
Meron akong nakakita lately, I've learned this about third eye. I don't know if you believe in third eye, but I have always believed in foresight. I've always believed in intuition. I always believed in a higher power that governs us, okay? So it may be third eye. So you can wish for your third eye to be open, but to see only good things, to see only abundance, to see only love, to see only joy. So third eye, hindi siya para sa mga aswang at mga multo, okay? Third eye can be open on good things. You pray that your third eye will be open, but you will only see the good things. You will only see the beauty, the kind, and the love and harmony, and all things good in this world.
It's always a good time with you.
Me too.
Grabe, taga namin.
Tagal natin yung nakita, no? Pero always kaming nag-like.
Thank you for celebrating
my fasting anniversary. Thank you, also. My pleasure. So, buti na lang nga. It's really a very happy day. We still have a few hours to end this day. And I'm so happy I got to share this with you, this special topic with you. And meron pang pahabol si Emma Handa. Please discuss next time about the importance of salt. Thanks, Doc. Okay, sige. May assignment na tayo. Sabi, salt tayo this Wednesday, ha? And Ronald, happy anniversary. Salamat po. Mabuhay po. Marami din po. And sige, mag-salt na tayo. Kasi natakot sila. At saka meron pa. Dapat ba? Himalayan pink salt talaga. Okay.
Dapat po black. What's the difference?
Dapat kung ano. So, itatakol natin yan. And to our dear Tita Ari Benedicto, congrats na praise the Jules in your IF anniversary. EF Tita, extended fasting. Kasi yung IF hindi na namin binilang. Kasi okay na siya pang beginners. But EF talaga is the game changer. Di ba, Chloe? So, yan. Happy anniversary and timing and hindi pa dumarating si Tyron Jan. Tyron Jan is my boyfriend, my partner in life, na kasama din namin mag-EF. But he is not here yet. At I think papasok siya mamaya para kakain. May ganun talaga. Okay, so I think that's all. Any last words? Wala naman.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
For all the support.
Yes. Please like Tito Mom PH, ha? Maganda. Mag-inspire kayo. Kahit sa food photography lang yun. Sobrang ganda. At saka presentation. At saka ako din ang mag-taste test para sa inyo.
Iba kasi talaga, Doc, pagka ikaw yung nag-crave, ikaw rin yung
gumagawa. Kasi alam mo what you want.
If you really are practicing keto. Parang lahat ng gusto mo, hindi ko pwedeng kainin. So,
you have to make your own. Yeah. And it comes from the need to optimize health, no?
It's a need.
Yeah, we don't need to complicate that. We can always stick to our usual Pinoy foods without the rice. That's why we have our group Life Without Rice and also low carb feasting and fasting community. But we are thankful, we are so thankful and we are so happy that we get to live in this modern day life, no? Now we can eat desserts.
Yes, it's possible.
Kasi nagme-mimic siya because Tito is a fast mimicking. Salamat po. So that's the end of our episode. Mami, Angela, you wanna say bye-bye? Bye! Thank you so much in here. Till next episode.
Bye! Good night!
Good night! Ay, nako!